Jamie's apartment's stairwell smelled faintly of fried food and cigarette smoke. It was a usual stench, so he ignored it. He adjusted the strap of his backpack, tired from classes and ready for nothing more than instant ramen and a shower. But as soon as he turned the corner to his floor, his steps faltered. The door to his tiny one-bedroom apartment was open. And inside, he could see them. Men. At least 4 of them, dressed in sharp black suits that didn't belong anywhere near this crumbling building. Jamie froze, heart hammering. One of the men looked up, spotting him immediately. His mouth curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Jamie Alvarez. Jamie's throat tightened. Yeah. Who are you? The man didn't answer. He simply straightened his suit, tugging on his black gloves before gesturing for Jamie to step inside. 2 others moved toward the doorway, blocking his escape. Panic shot through him, but his feet moved anyway, carrying him into his own apartment. His father sat in a chair, his face pale and sweaty, eyes darting between Jamie and the suited men. "Dad, what's going on?" Jamie asked, surprised to see his father in his house. His father flinched. "Jamie, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you." "Didn't tell me what?" Jamie snapped, turning to the men. "Who the hell are you people? Why are you in my apartment?" The leader finally stepped forward. His presence filled the room. "Your father owes the Moretti family a debt. A very large one." The name made Jamie's stomach drop. Even he had heard of the Morettis, the Mafia family that owned half the city. The man's gaze lingered on him for a beat. Then coldly, he spoke. "And starting tonight, you belong to them." Jamie's pulse thundered in his ears. "Excuse me." His voice cracked. "I'm not. What do you mean belong? I didn't borrow anything. This has nothing to do with me." The suited man didn't flinch. The 2 men blocking the doorway stepped closer, their presence suffocating. "Your father had nothing left to offer us. Nothing but you. Consider yourself payment." Jamie's father dropped his head into his hands, shame carving lines into his face. "Jamie, I had no choice." "No choice." Jamie's chest tightened with fury. "You sold me off." "Take him," the leader ordered. Jamie barely had a chance to look for an escape before rough hands clamped down on his arms, shoving his backpack to the floor. He struggled, kicking, twisting, his voice echoing through the cramped apartment. "Let go of me. You can't just take me. Stop. Dad." But his father couldn't look at him. The men dragged him into the hallway, their grip iron tight. His protests were drowned out by the low hum of the building, the neighbor's silence a reminder that no one dared get involved. Outside, a sleek black car waited. Jamie was shoved inside. His wrists were pinned before he could reach for the door handle. "Sit still," one of the men muttered. The drive was long and Jamie's heart wouldn't slow down, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. "They're taking me to the boss. I'm dead. I'm so dead." When the car finally rolled to a stop, it wasn't at some grimy warehouse. It was in front of a mansion, gates taller than anything he'd ever seen, guarded by more men in black. The men yanked him out, dragging him across the steps until the heavy doors swung open. Inside, the mansion was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, gold accents, marble floors that clicked beneath his worn sneakers. Everything screamed wealth and danger. And then he saw him. Seated casually on a sofa was a young man. No older than Jamie, maybe early 20s, but his presence filled the room. A glass of red wine dangling from his fingers as though this was some casual meet-up. He smirked the moment their eyes met. "So," he drawled, his voice taunting, "this is the debtor's son." The men shoved Jamie forward, making him stumble to his knees on the polished floor. His face burned with humiliation as the young man rose, walking closer slowly. When he stopped in front of him, Jamie had to tilt his chin up to meet his gaze. The man's smirk widened. "Welcome to my home. From now on, you belong to me." Jamie's knees ached against the polished floor, but the sting of humiliation burned worse. He glared up at the man. The young man, Adrien Moretti, looked at him from head to toe slowly. "So this is what my father traded for a pile of debts," Adrien said, voice dripping with amusement. He reached down, casually hooking a finger under Jamie's chin and forcing his gaze higher. "You don't look like much." Jamie jerked his head away. "I'm not for sale." Adrien laughed softly. "You think you get a choice?" He leaned down, bringing his face closer. You're standing in my house, on my floors. If I tell you you're mine, then you are. Jamie's stomach twisted. He hated the smugness in Adrien's tone, hated how easily the man asserted control. But before he could retort, Adrien's expression shifted. The smirk remained, but his gaze hardened. His hand lingered at Jamie's chin, but this time his grip tightened, not painful, but firm enough to remind him who held the power. Listen carefully. You'll eat what I give you. Sleep where I tell you. Breathe when I let you. Test me. Adrien leaned closer, his lips brushing Jamie's ear as he whispered, and you'll learn very quickly what happens to disobedient toys. Jamie's heart pounded, his breath hitching despite. Then, just as suddenly, Adrien let go, stepping back with a lazy smirk. Relax. I don't bite. Unless I want to. He chuckled, amused by Jamie's glare. Adrien set his wine glass aside on a table, then leaned lazily against the back of the sofa, crossing his arms. His sharp eyes never left Jamie. First, you will stay in the East Wing. His tone was sharp, commanding. Second, you'll attend me when I say so. That could mean dinners, business functions, or simply when I'm bored. Consider yourself my shadow when I want one. Jamie's fists clenched. I'm not. Adrien cut him off. Third, don't speak unless spoken to. Your voice is mine to use when I allow it. Adrien took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. His voice lowered, colder now. And the most important rule, you don't disobey me. Ever. If I say sit, you sit. If I say stay, you stay. If I say you're mine. He leaned close enough for Jamie to feel the brush of his breath. Then you damn well are. Jamie's throat tightened, fury and panic tangled together. I'm not a dog. Adrien chuckled, leaning back again. Good. I don't like dogs. He clapped his hands once, and the suited men stepped forward. Jamie thrashed against the suited men's grip as they hauled him up the grand staircase. Let me go, he snapped. You can't just lock me up like some prisoner. One of the guards didn't even flinch. You'll make it easier on yourself if you walk. I'm not going anywhere. Jamie shoved backward, nearly slipping free, but the second man tightened his hold. They reached a long corridor lined with heavy wooden doors. At the far end, one of the men swung open a door. The room inside was huge, bigger than Jamie's entire apartment. A queen-sized bed draped in dark silk sheets dominated the center, a chandelier glimmering overhead. Jamie stumbled inside, nearly falling to his knees when they shoved him forward. The door slammed shut behind him with a final click. Jamie spun toward the door and tugged on its handle. It didn't budge. Locked. Damn it, he whispered, kicking the door hard enough to sting his foot. You bastards. He pressed his forehead against the door, exhausted. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, knees drawn up to his chest, staring blankly at the room that wasn't his home. For the first time that night, the reality hit him like a punch to the gut. He was trapped. Owned. By Adrien Moretti. The next day, Jamie's room door finally opened. A guard stepped in, curtly ordering, "The young master wants to see you." Jamie's blood boiled at the title. Tell him to choke on it. The guard only sighed, grabbing him by the arm and hauling him down another set of corridors. This time, Jamie didn't fight as hard. His body was sore from the night before, and he was starving. But his glare could have cut glass. They stopped at another door, far grander than his. When it swung open, Jamie's jaw clenched. Adrien's room wasn't just a bedroom, it was a kingdom. Dark velvet curtains half-drawn, shelves lined with books and liquor, a massive bed. Lounging casually against the bed frame, still in loose silk pajamas, was Adrien himself. Ah, good, Adrien drawled, lifting his gaze from a book. My new toy decided to show up. Jamie's fists balled. By force. Adrien's smirk widened. Still talking back? You're either brave or stupid. He stood up from his bed and crossed the room. Jamie stood his ground. Adrien stopped in front of him, towering over him. Your first duty is simple. You'll attend me today. Walk where I walk. And when I tell you to stay, his finger lifted Jamie's chin again, just like last night. You'll learn how to obey. Jamie's breath hitched, fury sparking in his chest. And if I don't? Adrien leaned closer, lips curving into a smirk. Then I'll make sure disobedience hurts. The tension thickened. Adrien's hand lingered for a beat longer, then he stepped back. Jamie's glare never wavered, but his body betrayed him. His head was light from the lack of sleep. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning before classes, hadn't slept since the men dragged him away. Adrien tilted his head, studying him. Then, with a snap of his fingers, a servant wheeled in a silver tray. The scent of warm bread, eggs, and coffee filled the room. Jamie's stomach growled audibly, and his face flamed. Adrien smirked. Thought so. He gestured toward the food, now sitting on a small table by the window. Eat. Jamie stiffened. I'm not hungry. Liar. Adrien's tone sharpened, cutting off his protest. If you pass out in front of me, I'll be annoyed. Sit. Now. Jamie hesitated, then against every ounce of pride in him, he moved to the chair. He picked up a fork and shoved a bite into his mouth. The moment the food hit his tongue, his resolve cracked. He started devouring it hungrily, as if he hadn't eaten in days. Adrien sat across from him, sipping coffee leisurely, watching with amusement. Better. You're less pathetic when you're not starving. Jamie shot him a glare mid-bite but didn't stop eating. He couldn't. When he finished, he slumped back in the chair, the heaviness of a full stomach finally sinking in. His eyelids drooped against his will. Adrien laid a suit neatly on the bed. Put this on later. Tonight, you're coming with me. Jamie forced his eyes open, frowning. Not a chance. Adrien smirked. Cute. You'll wear it. He said, heading for the door. Now sleep. You look like hell. Jamie wanted to argue, but the couch was too soft, and exhaustion dragged him under before he realized it. Hours later, the sound of the door opening jolted him awake. Jamie blinked disoriented. He sat up, realizing he had slept hours. It was nearly 9 in the evening. Adrien leaned casually against the doorframe, no longer in silk pajamas but in a sharp suit, perfectly fitted. Finally awake. His voice was mocking. I was starting to think you'd not wake up. Jamie rubbed his eyes, his voice rough. You could have let me sleep. Adrien strode into the room. He stopped by the couch, staring down at him. You've had your rest. Now it's time to earn it. He lifted the suit from the bed and dropped it onto Jamie's lap. Get dressed. We are late. Jamie looked down at the sleek fabric, then back up at Adrien. His chest tightened with stubborn resistance. And if I don't? Adrien leaned closer, his gaze burning, his smirk turning sharp. Then I'll dress you myself. The words hung heavy in the air, daring Jamie to defy him. Minutes later, Jamie tugged uncomfortably at the suit jacket Adrien had forced him to wear. The fabric was expensive, far too nice for someone like him, and the worst part was that it actually fit, as if Adrien had ordered a tailor just for him. He followed Adrien down the grand hallway, expecting the doors to open into a grand dining hall filled with dangerous men in black suits. He braced himself for humiliation, for Adrien to parade him in front of the Mafia like some prize he'd won. But when the heavy doors swung open, his breath caught. The room was empty, except for a dining table set for 2. The entire place looked like something out of a romance movie, not a Mafia deal. Jamie froze. What is this? Adrien smirked, striding forward like he owned the place, and he did. Dinner, obviously. Jamie's brow furrowed. Just us. Of course just us, Adrien replied smoothly, pulling out the chair at the head of the table before sliding into it with ease. Why? Were you hoping for company? Jamie's pulse quickened. This wasn't what he'd expected. He had prepared himself to be mocked and displayed like a possession in front of others. Instead, this felt personal. Too personal. Adrien gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. Jamie lingered, arms crossed. What's the catch? Adrien's smirk widened. No catch. I said you're my shadow. That includes dinner. Now stop sulking and eat. Unless you'd rather starve again. Reluctantly, Jamie sank into the chair. The meal began quietly. Jamie hadn't eaten anything like this in his life. He tried not to show how much it impressed him, keeping his posture stiff, his expression hard. Adrien, of course, noticed anyway. Not bad, HM. Adrien said, sipping his wine lazily. You've got good taste for someone raised on instant noodles. Jamie glared. And what do you know about me? Adrien leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. His smirk softened, just a little. Enough. Jamie's chest tightened. He hated how those eyes pinned him down. The tension only deepened when the next dish arrived. Adrien picked up a piece of roasted tomato with his own fork, twirling it slightly before leaning across the table. "Open," Adrien said, his tone teasing but commanding. Jamie's jaw clenched. "Are you serious right now?" "Deadly." Adrien's smirk turned slow, dangerous. "You eat when I say. Remember the rules." For a long moment, Jamie stayed frozen. His pride screamed at him to shove the fork away. But the weight of Adrien's gaze had him leaning forward despite himself. The tomato burst sweet on his tongue, and Jamie instantly regretted letting it happen. His face burned as Adrien leaned back, satisfied. "Good boy," Adrien murmured, almost to himself, before sipping his wine again. Jamie's heart skipped. He hated that heat rising in his chest. "Don't ever call me that," he muttered, but his voice wasn't as sharp as he wanted it to be. Adrien's smirk widened. He'd heard the weakness. He continued on with his feeding. Halfway through Adrien feeding him, Jamie shoved his chair back, the leg scraping against the polished floor. "That's enough," he muttered, standing. "I'm not doing this." Adrien's eyes flicked up lazily from his wine glass, but there was a sharp edge behind the calm. "Sit down." Jamie's hands balled into fists. "No. I'm not going to sit here and let you feed me like some dash." He didn't get to finish. In a blur of movement, Adrien was on his feet. He grabbed Jamie's wrist and shoved him back down into the chair. Jamie's breath hitched, the back of the chair creaking as he landed hard. His pulse throbbed in his throat, fury and something else tightening his chest. Adrien leaned over him, one hand pressing firmly on his shoulder, keeping him pinned. His smirk was gone now, his expression darker, colder. "When I tell you to stay," he said, his voice low, dangerous, "you stay." Jamie glared up at him. "Get your hands off me." Adrien tilted his head slightly, studying him with unnerving calm. Then slowly, he leaned closer, his face just inches away. "Careful," Adrien murmured. "If you keep fighting me, I'll start to wonder if you're begging me to break you." Jamie's breath caught, his cheeks flushing hot. The way Adrien said it, it didn't sound like an empty threat. Adrien held his gaze a beat longer, then he gave Jamie's shoulder one last squeeze. He straightened, smirk returning, as if nothing had happened. "Good. Now eat." Jamie swallowed hard, his hand trembling slightly around the fork he picked up again. The rest of the meal dragged on in a tense silence. Jamie ate stiffly, refusing to look at Adrien, every nerve still buzzing from being shoved down. His pride screamed at him to stand up again, to push back harder, but his body stayed rooted in the chair. Adrien, on the other hand, seemed utterly at ease. He sipped his wine, occasionally watching Jamie with that infuriating half-smile, as though he were watching his favorite pet sulk. When dessert was finished and the plates were cleared, Jamie made the mistake of standing up first. "I'll find my way back." Adrien rose smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. "No, I'll take you." Jamie scoffed. "I don't need a babysitter." Adrien stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it sting. "Good thing I'm not your babysitter, then. I'm your owner." Jamie jaw tightened. "Go to hell." Adrien smirked and leaned in, his lips close enough to brush Jamie's ear as he murmured, "Already there. And I dragged you with me." Before Jamie could snap back, Adrien placed a hand firmly on the small of his back, steering him toward the hall. Jamie shoved at his hand once. Adrien didn't move it. The walk back to the east wing felt longer than it should have. Every time Jamie tried to quicken his pace, Adrien matched it effortlessly, his hand never leaving him. When they reached Jamie's door, Adrien leaned casually against the frame, blocking him from closing it. "Not bad for your first night," Adrien said, eyes glinting. "You're stubborn, but I like that." With that, he pushed the door shut behind Jamie, leaving him fuming, pulse racing in ways he didn't want to think about. The next day, the sunlight streaming through the curtains was what finally woke Jamie. He sat up and groaned when he realized where he was. Still here. Still trapped. But then his eyes flicked to the clock. 7:15. His chest jolted. School. Throwing back the covers, Jamie scrambled out of bed. If he hurried, maybe he could sneak out before Adrien noticed. He threw on the wrinkled clothes he'd worn from campus, grabbed his battered backpack from where it had been tossed on the floor, and cracked open the door. The hall was quiet. Empty. Jamie's heart raced. He moved quickly, sneakers silent against the carpet, weaving through the corridors until the grand staircase came into view. If he could just make it outside. Going somewhere. Jamie froze. Adrien was at the bottom of the stairs, already in a suit, hairstyled immaculately. He leaned against the banister, arms crossed. Jamie's grip tightened on the strap of his backpack. I have school. Adrien's brows lifted, amusement sparking in his eyes. Adorable. You think you're still a normal college kid? I am, Jamie shot back, voice sharp. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be Dash. Sold. Adrien finished smoothly, his smirk dropping just enough to let the weight of his words sink in. You're not walking out of here like nothing's changed. You're mine now. That means my rules come before your classes. Jamie's mouth went dry. You can't just lock me up and dash. But before he could finish, a new voice cut through the air. It was deeper. Adrien. Jamie's blood ran cold. At the base of the staircase stood an older man in a tailored black suit. His presence was suffocating, heavier than Adrien's teasing arrogance. His eyes, piercing and calculating, landed on Jamie. Even Adrien straightened slightly. His smirk was still there, but it had lost its ease. Father. The Mafia boss, head of the Moretti family, clasped his hands behind his back. His gaze slid from Adrien to Jamie, lingering with disdain. So this is the debt payment. Jamie swallowed hard, his feet suddenly rooted to the floor. The man's lips curved into something cruel. Pathetic. The air seemed to thicken under the weight of the Moretti patriarch's presence. His eyes flicked over Jamie once before turning to Adrien. You wasted time with this one, his father said flatly. If you wanted to teach Alvarez a lesson, you should have killed his son outright. Nothing drives a man to ruin faster than watching his blood spilled in front of him. Jamie's heart stopped. The words sliced through him. Killed. His legs felt weak. He had expected humiliation, pain, but death? He hadn't even let his mind wander that far. For a second, the world tilted. He wasn't here as punishment. He was here instead of a body in the ground. His gaze darted to Adrien. Adrien's jaw tightened, but his smirk returned almost immediately. Oh please. That's too boring. Kill him, and the debt ends in an instant. Keep him, and I get entertainment and leverage. Jamie's pulse thundered, his breath caught somewhere between fear and realization. Adrien's voice was playful, dismissive as ever, but underneath, Jamie heard the truth. Adrien had suggested keeping him alive. Adrien had saved him. The father's gaze narrowed. Entertainment? Is that what you call dragging useless trash into your home? Adrien stepped forward, his smirk daring. Call it what you want. I call it mine. The room went still. Adrien had said it so easily, so arrogantly, but it carried weight. Claiming him meant protection, even if it came wrapped in chains. The Moretti head circled Jamie like a predator assessing weak prey. This boy has no use, the father said coldly. He can't fight. He's a liability. Jamie's chest tightened, but he forced himself not to look away. Adrien's smirk remained. Not true. He's useful to me. The father was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous. Then prove it. We have a deal tonight with the Vargases. We need bait. Jamie's stomach dropped. Bait. Adrien's smirk flickered just for a second, but his father caught it. Send him, the boss continued. Let's see if this little toy of yours can survive being useful. If not, he dies. Either outcome is profitable. Jamie's breath came sharp and shallow. Adrien's fingers twitched at his side, his smirk returning like a mask being forced back on. He laughed softly, too casual, too sharp. Fine. Send him. I'll make sure he plays his part. But beneath the arrogance, his eyes darkened. Jamie caught it in a flash before Adrien turned away. For the first time, Jamie realized the truth. Adrien didn't want him near any of this. But if he showed it, his father would rip Jamie apart just to punish them both. Jamie fully forgot about school. That evening, Jamie sat on the edge of the bed in his guest room, clutching the hem of the suit jacket Adrien had tossed at him. Adrien leaned against the dresser, already dressed to perfection. He watched Jamie with calm, unreadable eyes. Your bait tonight, Adrien finally said. Adrien pushed off the dresser and stepped closer, lowering his tone. The Vargases have something my father wants. A list of politicians they've been paying off under the table. Jamie's brows furrowed. What does that have to do with me? Adrien smirked evilly. Their heir, Leon Vargas. Pretty boy. Known for being reckless. Known for liking what doesn't belong to him. My father thinks you'll catch his attention. Jamie froze. His chest tightened with anger and dread. You want me to, what, flirt with him? Let him. Adrien's smirk thinned, his eyes flickering darker. You're going to seduce him. Let him think you're interested. Keep him distracted. Long enough for us to dig up what we need. Jamie shot to his feet, fists clenched. I'm not your whore. The air shifted. Adrien's smirk didn't fade. He stepped forward, close enough that Jamie had to tilt his chin up to glare at him. No, Adrien murmured, voice dangerously soft. You're mine. And right now, that means you're going to do exactly what I tell you, because the alternative is my father getting rid of you. And trust me, his smile was wider. I won't be able to stop him. Jamie's throat went dry. Adrien reached out suddenly, gripping Jamie's chin between his fingers, tilting his face up. I don't want you near them, Adrien whispered, almost too low to hear. But I can't say that out loud. So you're going to go in there, play your part, and survive. Understand? Jamie's breath stuttered. His chest pounded with confusion, fear, anger, and something else he didn't want to name. Adrien released him suddenly, stepping back, his smirk sliding back into place like armor. Good boy. Now put on the suit. Leon Vargas likes sharp dressing. Jamie wanted to scream at him. He wanted to throw the jacket in his face. But beneath all that rage, one truth clung like chains around his chest. Adrien was sending him into danger. But Adrien was also the only reason he'd make it out alive. Minutes later. It was a club. Jamie doesn't know why Adrien gave him a suit to wear at a club, but this was not the time to dwell on that. The club was alive, pulsing with energy, but all Jamie felt was the weight of eyes on him. It was the Moretti's men lingering in the shadows, watching. Adrien leaned down to murmur in his ear, his voice warm enough to send a shiver down Jamie's neck. Remember, look lost, look pretty, and let him come to you. Jamie frowned. I hate this. Adrien's smirk widened, though his jaw was tight. You'll live. He slipped away toward the bar, his men falling into place, leaving Jamie alone. Jamie swallowed hard and drifted into the crowd, weaving through dancing bodies. The plan was simple. Leon Vargas was a regular here, a spoiled prince who loved showing off. So he'd notice Jamie. Jamie would keep him distracted, but in plain view. Adrien would use that distraction to pull intel from the Vargas' phones upstairs. It shouldn't take long. Jamie bumped into someone, literally spilling a bit of the guy's drink down the front of his expensive blazer. Oh shit, sorry. Jamie started, backing up. The man turned, and Jamie's chest clenched. Leon Vargas. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with blonde hair slicked back and a cocky grin already forming on his lips. His sharp brown eyes raked over Jamie in one slow sweep that made Jamie want to crawl out of his own skin. Well, well, Leon drawled, setting his glass aside. What do we have here? Jamie forced a nervous smile. Didn't mean to bump into you. It's crowded, you know. Leon chuckled, stepping closer, his cologne sharp and intoxicating. Crowded, sure, but you stand out. He tilted Jamie's chin up with 2 fingers, bold as hell. Pretty thing like you shouldn't be wandering alone. Jamie froze, his heart hammering. This was working too well. Before he could think of an excuse, Leon slung an arm around his shoulders. Come with me. Jamie's eyes widened. Wait dash. But Leon was already steering him through the crowd, past velvet ropes and into a private corridor. His men flanked the hall, giving Leon respectful nods as he pushed Jamie into a lush VIP room, shutting the door behind them. From across the club, Adrien's smirk cracked. His eyes locked on the door Leon had just dragged Jamie into, the glass in his hand tightening until it almost shattered. That wasn't part of the plan, one of his men muttered at his side. Adrien's jaw flexed. His eyes burned with a quiet fury. No, it wasn't. Do we intervene? Adrien forced his smirk back on. Not yet. Get me that file. I don't care if you have to rip the Varga servers apart, just hurry. He downed the rest of his drink, gaze still fixed on the closed VIP door. His voice dropped, sharp and cold enough to cut glass. If Leon lays a finger on him before I get what I need, I'll paint this club red. Inside the private room, Jamie's pulse raced as Leon poured them both drinks, the music from the club muffled by the walls. Leon leaned back on the couch, patting the seat beside him. Sit. Let's get to know each other. Jamie swallowed hard, his mind screaming this wasn't supposed to happen. But Adrien's warning echoed in his ears. Play your part and survive. So Jamie sat, heart pounding. Leon handed Jamie a glass of liquor, his smirk curling as Jamie hesitated before taking a sip. Then, without warning, Leon shifted closer, his knee brushing Jamie's. You're nervous, Leon said smoothly, one hand coming up to brush Jamie's hair back from his forehead. Don't be. I don't bite. His grin widened. Much. Jamie forced a laugh, trying not to flinch when Leon's fingers trailed down his jaw. Keep him distracted, Adrien's voice echoed in his head. Leon's hand slid lower, brushing Jamie's thigh. Jamie's muscles went rigid, his chest tightening. He couldn't pull away. If he ruined the act now, everything would be blown. So he endured. That's it, Leon murmured, leaning close, lips nearly brushing Jamie's ear. Just relax. You're too pretty to be this tense. Jamie swallowed hard, biting down his instinct to shove Leon away. His heart hammered, every second stretching like torture. In his ear, Adrien's low voice finally came through the earpiece, rougher than usual. Keep him talking. Don't let him get what he wants. Jamie's throat tightened. Easier said than done, he muttered under his breath, eyes darting to the door. On the other side of that door, Adrien was pacing like a caged beast. His glass of wine was long gone, his fists clenching at his sides as he listened to Leon's laughter filtering through the earpiece. Every time Leon touched Jamie, every time Jamie's breath hitched, Adrien's jaw locked tighter. He could picture it too vividly. Leon's hands on Jamie, that smug grin, Jamie's tense body enduring it. His men shifted uneasily, watching him like they expected him to snap any second. Boss, one of them said carefully, we are almost done. Just a few more minutes. I don't have a few more minutes. Adrien's voice was like a blade, his eyes burning holes into the VIP door. Inside, Leon was pressing closer, his hand sliding higher on Jamie's thigh. Jamie's chest seized with panic. He couldn't hold out much longer. Adrien's breath hitched in his ear. That's it, he muttered. I'm going in. But before he could move, one of his men grabbed his arm. Wait. We got it. The intel's secure. We have the list. Adrien froze. Good, he said slowly, his voice dripping with venom. Then I don't need to hold back anymore. With that, Adrien strode toward the VIP door, his men scrambling to follow, the air vibrating with the fury of what was about to come. Leon's hand crept higher on Jamie's thigh, his smirk widening at the flush of discomfort painting Jamie's face. You really are something, he drawled, voice low. Tell me your name, sweetheart. The door to the VIP room clicked open. Leon turned lazily, clearly annoyed at the interruption. I said no one dash. He stopped. Adrien Moretti strolled inside like he owned the place. His smirk was relaxed, but his eyes were anything but. Leon Vargas, Adrien said smoothly, shutting the door behind him. Still making yourself at home in other people's spaces, I see. Leon stiffened, then forced a grin. Adrien, didn't expect to see you here tonight. Adrien ignored him. His gaze slid past Leon like he was air, settling instead on Jamie. His expression softened, just barely, before hardening again, as if the brief flicker of concern had never existed. He crossed the room slowly and stopped beside the couch. I was looking for you, Adrien said to Jamie, his eyes scanning Jamie for any sign of distress, before cutting back to Leon. Leon's smirk faltered. He's with you. Adrien's smirk was predatory. He's mine. Jamie could feel heat rushing to his face. His heartbeat was loud, and it wasn't from fear anymore. Leon raised his hand slightly, forcing a laugh. Didn't mean to step on your toes. He bumped into me. I thought he was alone. You thought wrong. Adrien's smile was still there, but his eyes promised violence. Touch him again, and it won't be my toes you'll worry about. Leon's grin slipped entirely, and with a muttered excuse, he walked toward the door, throwing Jamie one last look before slipping out. Adrien straightened slowly. He glanced down at Jamie, who was still trembling on the couch. "You played your part well," Adrien said softly, his smirk gone, his voice low. "But don't ever make me listen to that again." Jamie swallowed hard, his chest tight. He didn't know if Adrien meant Leon's hands on him or Jamie's own stifled gasps echoing through the earpiece. Either way, Adrien reached down and pulled him to his feet, his grip firm. "Let's go home." That night, Jamie couldn't sleep. Every time he shut his eyes, flashes of the night replayed, the press of Leon's hand, Adrien's voice in his ear, the way Adrien had stood over him and said mine like it was the law. Restless, Jamie slipped out of bed to get water, padding down the hall quietly. But as he passed Adrien's study, he heard Adrien's voice. The mission was successful. "We got the Vargas intel. But Jamie isn't to be used again." Jamie froze. On the other end of the call, Don Moretti's replied, his voice dark. "You're soft. The boy is worthless except as leverage." Adrien's reply was instant, hard as steel. "Then use him as leverage against me, if you must. But he's not bait again. Not while I'm in charge." Silence stretched on the other end, then the click of the call ending. Adrien let out a breath, pinching the bridge of his nose, his mask slipping for a fraction of a second. Jamie's heart twisted. He hadn't expected that. Adrien had saved him once already by suggesting the debt be paid this way, but now, this was different. This was care, even if Adrien would never admit it out loud. Jamie retreated silently, his pulse racing, his chest filled with warmth. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of the Moretti estate, far too calm for the storm brewing inside Jamie's chest. By the time Adrien strolled into the dining room, sharp in his suit, Jamie was already waiting. "Morning, princess," Adrien drawled, setting his cup down. "Sleep well after your performance." Jamie's jaw clenched. "Don't." Adrien arched an eyebrow, amused. "Don't what?" "Don't act like you don't care." The smirk froze, just barely, but Jamie caught it. He leaned forward across the table, eyes burning. "I heard you. Last night. You told your father not to use me as bait again." For once, Adrien didn't have a quick response. He leaned back, studying Jamie carefully, eyes narrowing. "You were eavesdropping?" Adrien finally asked, voice dangerously calm. "I wasn't trying to," Jamie shot back, heart pounding. "But I heard you. And I need to know why." Adrien's silence was heavy. The room felt colder with tension. Then, slowly, that smug mask slipped back into place. "You think too much," Adrien said smoothly, swirling his coffee. "Of course I don't want you in missions again. You're sloppy. Weak. A liability." Jamie's stomach twisted, his face flushing with anger. "That's not why." Adrien's gaze snapped up to his, sharp as glass. Jamie forced himself not to look away. "You could have agreed with your father. You could have let them use me until I broke. But you didn't. Why?" For a long moment, Adrien said nothing. Finally, he stood, walking around the table until he was standing right beside Jamie. He leaned down, close enough that Jamie could feel his breath against his ear. "Careful," Adrien murmured, his voice low, dangerous. "If you keep asking questions like that, you might not like the answer." Jamie's heart hammered. He wanted to push Adrien away, wanted to demand the truth. Adrien straightened, brushing a hand over Jamie's shoulder almost absent-mindedly as he walked past. "Eat your breakfast, Jamie. You've got school." And just like that, he was gone, leaving Jamie even more confused than before. Jamie stared at his reflection in the mirror. He wore his usual hoodie and jeans, backpack slung over his shoulder. For the first time in days, he felt like himself. "School," Adrien had said that morning, as if it were the most casual thing in the world. Jamie hadn't dared to believe it until now. He stepped out the front gate of the Moretti estate, and his chest swelled with excitement. The chatter of students, the mundane noise of teenage life, it was a world he thought he'd lost. But as he walked through the gates, his smile faltered. A black car was parked across the street, tinted windows, men in suits pretending to be inconspicuous. Adrien's men. Jamie sighed. Of course. He wasn't free, he was on a leash. Still, he forced himself to enjoy the day, soaking in the normalcy like sunlight, laughing too loudly with classmates, dragging out every minute of freedom. By evening, though, the leash pulled tighter. Jamie slipped away from the men trailing him, ducking into an alley, weaving through backstreets until he finally reached a rundown diner at the edge of the city. He wanted to eat some ramen. Back at the estate, Adrien's fist slammed against his desk. Papers scattered, his men bowing their heads nervously. "You lost him." Adrien's voice was a low, dangerous growl. "One boy, and you let him vanish under your noses." "He was quick, sir." Slipped away in the crowd. Adrien's jaw ticked, his hands tightening. His pulse raced. But before his temper snapped fully, the door creaked open. Adrien whipped his head around, ready to tear into whoever dared enter, but he stiffened. Jamie strolled in, backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder, hoodie slightly rumpled, eyes wide with fake innocence. "What's with the face?" Jamie asked, plopping down on the couch like he owned the place. "You look like someone just told you your credit card got declined." The room went dead silent. Adrien's men stiffened, waiting for the storm. Adrien's jaw was tight, his glare sharp enough to kill. But beneath it, his chest loosened with a relief he refused to show. He stalked toward Jamie, stopping just close enough to loom over him. "Where were you?" Jamie blinked up, shrugging casually. "School. Then out." "I'm not your prisoner, Adrien," Jamie said and walked to his room casually. The night was quiet after the chaos of the day. Jamie had showered, thrown on an oversized t-shirt, and wandered the halls, still restless. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the lingering adrenaline from sneaking out, maybe the fact that he chose to return here, to Adrien. He reached Adrien's door, meaning to ask Adrien something, and froze. Inside, Adrien stood in front of a long mirror, half-dressed. His shirt hung open, revealing his abs and tattoos on his chest that Jamie had never seen, since he was always wearing suits. Jamie's breath caught. His hand shot to the doorknob. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." But before he could shut the door, Adrien turned. And smirked. "Well, well," Adrien drawled, voice low and amused. "You've seen it, so what's the point of running?" Jamie's face burned. "I didn't mean. I wasn't looking." Adrien stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Then why are you blushing?" Jamie stumbled back into the wall, eyes darting anywhere but at him. "I just forget it, okay?" But Adrien was already closing the distance, predatory, his shirt still hanging open. He stopped just inches away, one hand braced against the wall beside Jamie's head, trapping him. "You came back tonight," Adrien murmured, voice brushing against Jamie's ear. "You could have run to your father. You could have stayed gone. But you walked back here. To me." Jamie's pulse thundered. His hands pressed against Adrien's chest, meaning to push him away, but it only made his knees weaker. "That doesn't mean anything," Jamie whispered, though even he didn't believe it. Adrien's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. His other hand slid up Jamie's side, fingers brushing the hem of his t-shirt. "Then why," Adrien said softly, pinning him tighter against the wall, "does it feel like it means everything?" Jamie's breath hitched. His world shrank down to the heat of Adrien's body, the intensity in his eyes, and the terrifying, undeniable truth. He wasn't sure he wanted to escape. Jamie's back pressed hard against the wall. Adrien's body was so close now he could feel every shift, every bit of heat radiating from him. "Adrien." Jamie tried, but his voice cracked, betraying the tremor in his chest. "Shush," Adrien hushed, his hand sliding up Jamie's jaw, tilting his chin until their eyes met. "No excuses. You came back. You're mine." Jamie's stomach flipped violently, his breath stuttering. "I'm not." But his protest was cut short as Adrien's lips crashed against his. Jamie's hands, once pushing, curled into Adrien's open shirt, gripping tightly as if he'd fall. The kiss was overwhelming, heat searing through him until his knees nearly buckled. Adrien smirked against his lips, sensing the way Jamie melted despite himself. "See," he murmured, lips grazing Jamie's skin as he trailed hot kisses along his jaw, down to his neck. "You say you're not mine, but your body tells me otherwise." Jamie's head tipped back, a soft, unwilling sound escaping him as Adrien's teeth grazed sensitive skin. His t-shirt was tugged upward, baring his stomach to Adrien's hot touch. "Adrien, please." Jamie gasped, unsure if he was begging for him to stop or to keep going. Adrien's grip tightened on his waist, pulling him flush against him, voice low and dangerous in his ear. You can beg. You can deny. You can even hate me. His lips brushed Jamie's neck again, claiming, possessive, but you'll never escape me. And when Adrien finally bit down, not enough to break skin, but enough to make Jamie shiver head to toe, Jamie knew the truth. Adrien hadn't just kissed him. He'd claimed him. Jamie's breath came fast and shallow. His neck throbbed faintly where Adrien had bitten him. Adrien lingered there for a second longer, lips brushing over the mark, before he finally pulled back. His expression was unreadable at first, dark eyes hooded, chest rising and falling more quickly than he wanted to admit. Jamie's lips parted, struggling for words, but nothing came out. Adrien smirked, smoothing Jamie's crumpled t-shirt back down, his fingers deliberately slow against Jamie's skin. Relax, Jamie, he said, voice calm again, as if he hadn't just pinned him to the wall. I'm not going to ruin you, yet. Jamie flushed hot, his hands balling at his sides. You're insane, he whispered, his voice shaky. Adrien only chuckled, stepping back and finally giving Jamie room to breathe. Maybe, but you came back to me. That single line made Jamie's chest twist. He wanted to argue, wanted to deny it, but it was the truth. He had chosen to walk back through that door. Adrien buttoned the rest of his shirt slowly, like nothing had happened. Get some sleep, he said smoothly, moving toward the door. You've got school tomorrow. Jamie rushed out of the room, back to his room. Immediately he locked his door, his legs gave out and he slid down against the door, pressing his hand over the throbbing spot on his neck, face burning. His heart still pounding. The next morning, the Moretti dining hall was quiet. Adrien sat at the head of the table, coffee in hand, his usual unreadable calm. Jamie sat a few seats down, trying to focus on his toast and ignore the weight of the stairs. Because Adrien's father was there. The old man's sharp eyes moved between his son and Jamie, narrowing slightly as they landed on Jamie's neck. The faint red mark peeked just above the collar of his hoodie, impossible to hide. A smirk tugged at the corners of his lips. So, the father drawled, his voice low, mocking. I see Adrien has finally found a use for you. A bed warmer. How fitting for the son of a coward. The insult hung in the air like poison. Adrien's jaw ticked, a warning glint flashing in his eyes, but before he could speak, Jamie slammed his fork down, making both men glance at him. At least I'm not an old man who hides behind power and insults kids just to feel strong. The room went dead silent. The father's smirk faltered, shock evident on his face. No one, not even Adrien's top lieutenants, ever spoke back to him like that. Jamie leaned forward, his pulse pounding, refusing to back down. You think I'm useless? Fine. But at least I'm not pathetic enough to kick someone who's already down just to prove I'm better. The words cut sharper than Jamie intended, his voice echoing in the hall. Adrien's father stared at him, unreadable now. Adrien, meanwhile, sat back in his chair, lips twitching into the faintest smirk, half proud, half possessive. For the first time, Jamie wasn't just surviving in this world. He was fighting back. And Adrien's father didn't quite know what to make of him. Adrien's father didn't speak. The silence that followed Jamie's outburst stretched. His sharp eyes stayed fixed on Jamie. Jamie's chest rose and fell quickly, but he refused to look away. His fork still rested on the table, his knuckles white from gripping it so hard. For a moment, Adrien thought his father would explode, slam his fist down, shout, call for someone to drag Jamie out. That's what he usually did when disrespected. But instead, the older man leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk tugged at his lips, though it was no longer cruel. He finally exhaled, sipping his wine slowly. Interesting. And then he said nothing more. Jamie blinked, caught off guard. His pulse was still racing, his body tense as if he was bracing for punishment, but it didn't come. Adrien set his coffee cup down. The corner of his lips still curled in a proud smile. Jamie had stood his ground, and instead of crushing him, Adrien's father let it slide. The hall was quiet after Adrien's father left. Jamie was still on edge, pacing in his room, replaying his own words over and over. He couldn't believe he'd actually snapped at the most dangerous man he'd ever met. A knock on the door broke his spiral. Before he could answer, Adrien stepped in. Jamie froze. Adrien shut the door behind him with a quiet click, his gaze locking onto Jamie. His gaze was unreadable and sharp. Then he spoke lowly. "Do you have any idea what you did this morning?" Jamie swallowed, backing a little towards the wall. I couldn't let him talk about me like that." Adrien stalked closer. Most men don't even breathe wrong around him. "And you?" You slammed a fork down and called him pathetic. Jamie's chest rose and fell quickly, his face heating under Adrien's stare. "I didn't mean to." "Don't lie." Adrien cut him off, his lips curling into a wicked smirk. He grabbed Jamie's chin, tilting it up. "You meant every word." Jamie's breath hitched. Adrien leaned closer, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. "And I'll tell you a secret. Watching you snap at him like that." His thumb brushed Jamie's bottom lip. "Made me hard." Jamie's eyes widened, his knees nearly giving way. "Adrien." "You look so fucking hot," Adrien growled, pressing him back against the wall, his body flush against Jamie's. "Angry, fire in your eyes, not taking anyone's shit. I wanted to bend you over that table." Jamie's face burned crimson, his hands pressing against Adrien's chest in a weak attempt to push him back. "You're insane." Adrien chuckled darkly, his lips brushing against Jamie's ear. "Maybe. But you love it, don't you?" Jamie shivered, his body betraying him with how his pulse raced, how his grip on Adrien's shirt only pulled him closer instead of pushing him away. Adrien's mouth ghosted along Jamie's neck, right over the fresh mark he'd left the night before. "I'll say it again, Jamie. You're mine. Even my father saw it today." Jamie's protests melted the moment Adrien's mouth claimed his. The kiss was demanding, leaving him breathless. Adrien pressed him harder against the wall, one hand gripping his hip possessively, the other tangled in his hair. Jamie's thoughts blurred. He knew this was insane. He had just yelled at Adrien's father, and now he was here, losing himself to Adrien. "Fuck." Adrien muttered against his mouth, biting at Jamie's lower lip. "You don't even know what you do to me." Jamie whimpered when Adrien lifted him effortlessly, carrying and setting him on the bed. Adrien spread Jamie's thighs, stepping between them like he owned every part of him. "Adrien." Jamie gasped as his shirt was tugged up. Adrien's voice was rough, hungry. "Say my name again." The night blurred after that, desperate kisses, clothes discarded in haste, Adrien's voice in his ear, claiming him again and again until Jamie couldn't think of anything else. The morning after. The sunlight slipped through the curtains, golden and warm. Jamie stirred, his body sore in ways that made his face flame instantly. Adrien was asleep beside him, one arm slung heavy and possessive across Jamie's waist, keeping him caged in. Jamie buried his face into the pillow, groaning. How the hell had this happened? He had yelled at Adrien's father, and somehow that had led to this. Jamie's lips were still swollen, his neck covered in more marks than before. Beside him, Adrien stirred, his grip tightening, pulling Jamie closer against his chest. Even in sleep, Adrien's hold was unyielding, like he'd never let go. And Jamie realized that a part of him didn't regret it. Jamie thought he was safe when he felt Adrien's breathing steady beside him. He carefully shifted, hoping to sneak out of bed before the other man woke up. But the moment Jamie moved, Adrien's arm tightened even more around his waist. "Where the fuck do you think you're going?" Adrien's voice was still husky from sleep. Jamie froze. "Bathroom." Adrien cracked one eye open, smirking lazily. "Bathroom, huh? Cute excuse. But I was thinking." He rolled Jamie onto his back with ease, caging him under his weight. Round 2. Jamie's face went crimson instantly. "Hey, Adrien. You're insane. We just last night." Adrien cut him off with a slow, hungry kiss. When he finally pulled back, his voice was softer than Jamie had ever heard it. "You drive me crazy, you know that." His thumb brushed Jamie's cheek. If it wasn't obvious by now, he paused, as if the words were heavier than any threat he'd ever made. "I like you, Jamie." Jamie stared up at him, stunned. His chest ached with a strange warmth, his lips parting like he wanted to say something, but Adrien didn't give him the chance. Instead, he claimed his mouth again, rough and desperate, dragging him into another round that left Jamie breathless and trembling all over again. And Jamie kissed him back without hesitation. It was a week later. Jamie returned from school, backpack slung over one shoulder. He wasn't expecting anything unusual until he spotted a figure by the front steps. His heart dropped. His father. The older man was on his knees in front of the massive doors, his clothes rumpled, his hands clasped tightly together. His voice was breaking as he pleaded. Please. I'm begging you. Take me instead. I'll do anything. Just let my boy go. He doesn't belong in this world. Jamie's breath hitched. Dad. He dropped his bag and rushed forward, kneeling beside him. What are you doing here? Get up. His father grabbed Jamie's face with trembling hands, tears welling in his eyes. Jamie, I'm sorry. I should have protected you. This isn't your burden, it's mine. Before Jamie could reply, a sharp sound echoed. The doors opened. Adrien stepped out, his presence immediately chilling the air. He had heard Jamie's voice, and the sight that met him made his jaw clench. Behind Adrien, the older Moretti emerged as well, his gaze cold and amused. Well, Adrien's father drawled. Isn't this touching? The coward comes crawling back, begging like a dog. Jamie's father lowered his head further. Insult me all you want. Just free Jamie. Let him live his life. Jamie's heart twisted. His father wasn't perfect. He had gambled, lied, left Jamie with debt. But right now, he was trying. Dad, Jamie whispered, his eyes stinging. We don't need him anymore. He's been nothing but a liability. Aiden's father said. He glanced at Jamie coldly. Perhaps I should grant your wish and be done with it. Jamie's blood ran cold. He clutched his father tighter. But then Adrien moved. He stepped between Jamie and his father, his tall frame blocking them from view. His voice was firm. No. His father's eyes narrowed. Adrien. He stays, Adrien said, his tone leaving no room for argument. His gaze flicked briefly to Jamie. Both of them. Under my terms. The tension hung thick in the air, power and defiance clashing. For a long moment, the silence was unbearable, until Adrien's father finally exhaled, a long, tired sigh. Stubborn, he muttered, shaking his head. You've always been stubborn, Adrien. He gave Jamie a last, unreadable look before turning away. Without another word, he walked away. The moment he was gone, Jamie's father turned to Jamie. Jamie, you don't have to do this. If you come with me, I'll try again, I'll fix this. You shouldn't have been dragged into his world. Jamie swallowed hard, his chest tightening. But when he looked at Adrien, I'm not here because I was forced anymore, Jamie said softly. He placed a hand over his father's trembling one. I want to stay. With him. I was okay here, Dad. More than okay. For once, I felt like I belonged somewhere. His father's eyes widened, glistening with tears. Are you sure about this, Jamie? Jamie nodded. I'm sure. For a long moment, his father just searched his face, looking for doubt. Finding none, he let out a shaky breath, and a faint, sad smile tugged at his lips. You've grown stronger than I thought. Jamie's throat tightened as he hugged him one last time. His father's hands clung to him desperately before finally letting go. Jamie stood there, still trembling from the weight of it all, his father's figure slowly fading down the driveway. The ache in his chest was heavy, but before it could swallow him, Adrien's hand slid around his waist and pulled him back firmly against him. You said you chose this, Adrien murmured, his voice low against Jamie's ear. Jamie nodded, cheeks flushing. Yeah, I did. Adrien tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly as if daring him to take it back. Then, with that dangerous, steady certainty only he could carry, he whispered, Good. Because you're mine, Jamie. Always. Adrien turned him around, gripping his chin gently but firmly, making sure Jamie met his gaze. And don't forget, Adrien added, his voice dropping even lower, dark and possessive. I'm yours too. Every part of me. No one else gets me like you do. Jamie's breath caught. Adrien wasn't just claiming him, he was offering himself in return. His chest warmed, and before he could stop himself, Jamie whispered back, almost shyly, Then I'll keep you. Adrien's lips curved into a dangerous smile, and he kissed Jamie hard, sealing the vow neither of them would ever break. The end.